100% listener-funded missionary radio.
Well, here we are again. This is the second episode of Meet the Radio Missionary here at Production Room 3, as we call it, at Missionary Radio. I have General Manager Ken Cummins, and I was trying to think of the order to do this, and he said, well, if you want to do it in order of seniority, you could do Joe. He's been here longest, which I did, then you. But you're oldest, though, right?
Well, just by a few months.
Okay.
Joe's a 1959 model. I could say, like a good friend of ours will say about the folks coming out of 1959, we're some of the last best things to come out of the 50s. So,
You've heard that joke a few times.
Yeah. Well, of course. But, yeah, I think from February to May older than Joe. That's it. But he's been here a long time.
This is your birth month. You turned 67 this month, right?
I'd heard that. Is that true?
I mean, you said 59.
I have a famous birthday. For those who are excited, back when John Calipari was the coach for the University of Kentucky Wildcats, I would always say that John Calipari and I have something in common except for our bank accounts. Of course, I'm better looking. But anyway, John Calipari was born on February 10th, 59. So was I. So there you go.
Okay, I didn't know it was the same year.
But he is now with the University of Arkansas. So anyway, that's not what our conversation's about.
It's not at all. But we know exactly how old you are now. That's for sure.
Yeah, we've got that nailed down.
All right. So you're Ken Cummins. You've been doing radio a while. You were the next in line to be interviewed, and like I said, we're going to go from the top. Who's been here the longest? That's an easy way to categorize it. So I know a lot about your story, obviously. I am your son, so this is more just me getting a refresher for the 40th time
with our
life.
listening family, or in this case, our viewing family. If you want to start from the beginning, radio has been a great influence in my life I would say all my life. It just so happens that I've always been an avid radio listener. When my growing up years, there was a time in my family that a television was not available. It wasn't because we're anti-television. It's just because of our economic status that we didn't have television.
You didn't have air conditioner till the 70s, did you?
Something like that? 1978.
I remember that.
And I bought it myself.
You were already you were out of high school at that point.
Yeah. So air conditioning.
So radio was a staple at the very beginning, obviously.
Well, exactly. And it goes back to the point that my mom's father, my maternal grandfather, the only grandfather I actually remember, was a radio repairman in Princeton, Kentucky. Is Jimmy Lambert. And he was always working on radios. When my mom worked outside the home, Maggie Lambert Cummins, I would spend time with my grandma and my grandfather, but during the day I would just stay in his shop. In fact, he didn't mind me being around, evidently, because he took an old TV cabinet and made a little tool workbench for me. And he said, now this is for you to work on. And he'd give me these old radios, and I'd take tubes out of them and act like I was reading the diagram and how to fix these things. And consequently, I learned a lot about the old radio sets and how to do what with them. But it's the listening that I enjoyed. We would listen to the radio during the day. Radio is kind of a passive medium. You can have it on in the background. You don't have to be glued and staring at it like you do a television. And you can hear it, and it's your company. It's someone it's like someone with you.
In your living room or your
wherever.
Workshop or your car.
Yeah, in your headphones. But back in those days, AM radio was the mainstay, although FM was around, mind you, but it just hadn't caught fire yet. And so we would listen to, on Saturdays in our home, at least I would listen to the Grand Ole Opry on WSM, and at night I'd listen to some of the clear frequency stations, clear channel AM stations all across the United States. WLS out of Chicago, a lot of my generation listened to that great station. And then another station, WLW out of New Orleans. I'd go on with this. We would listen to the radio. And my mom, during the day, whenever she wasn't working, I was staying with her. My older sisters were in school already. we would listen to various AM stations, and so radio has always struck a chord with me. From there, I probably when I was about 12 years old, somewhere along there, for a Christmas present, I received my first cassette recorder.
Oh, I'm sure you loved hearing your voice even at that age, huh?
No, not necessarily, but
Folks, sorry, I have to mess with him. He's my
but
dad.
not, yeah, you just had to, but not necessarily. The thing is, I would get script or anything I could find out of a book and read it into that cassette recorder and play it back. I would pretend by listening to some of the great disc jockeys of those days as if I were one, and so radio has always been a thing for me. Now, the biggest connection to radio to me that made such a difference, on Sundays at the local station in Princeton, which is WPKY, the programming on Sunday was entirely Christian broadcasting. Now, in those days, there wasn't, although there were a few around, but not around us, a full-time Christian radio station. But on Sundays, there would be preaching, teaching programs. And on Sunday afternoon, Leslie Goodacre, who owned WPKY, would have programs from various parts, some from Moody Broadcasting, some from Grand Rapids, Michigan, one of which was Aunt Bertha's Story Hour. And Aunt B. We were listening.
That sounds like the 60s.
Well, it was probably 1966.
So you listened to that.
Well, yes. But here's the story behind it. My dad worked during the day, and so my mom didn't drive. We only had one family car anyway, but someone would pick us up and take us to church. And on Sunday afternoons, well, here we are. I'd listen to radio whenever it was especially cooler weather, and not I was outside. I love being outside. But anyway,
Another thing of the past.
One particular day. I'd been listening very carefully to our pastor, and I knew about salvation, what it took to be saved. But I became very strongly under conviction of the Holy Spirit, and I was listening to Aunt B story time, Aunt Bertha, and right there, I remember by the bookcase in our living room area where the radio was set I told Mom, I said, it's time for me to be saved. Instead of her calling the preacher, which couldn't anyway, didn't have a telephone, but instead of her running off and seeing if somebody else could do that, she took the Bible out and led me to Jesus, and it was through broadcasting.
How old were you?
7 years old.
And you were listening to the radio when that happened.
Oh, absolutely. And then I followed up the following Sunday and made it public, was baptized.
You know, it actually makes me think of a story. Whenever Tammy Cummins, my mom, we were at the Jeremy Camp concert, a kid came up to the table after I went and spoke to the people there about missionary radio and everything, and he's heard Adventures in Odyssey. He said, "I've heard that show. I really enjoy that," and that just made me think of that because it was 2025 November when that happened, and then back in 1919 when that happened with you.
No, it's 1966.
I'm kidding, but back many years ago.
60 years ago.
I think that it could still touch a child's heart today. Is my point.
No doubt. And so to spin the dial forward, there is some time in my life that of course my interest is with a teenager kind of shifted, but still though my relationship with the Lord meant a ton to me, and I realized that radio would be a big part. It wasn't until I was later on in my teen years that I got my first job in broadcasting.
At WPKY. Twyman Borum.
Well, actually, Twyman did hire me, and Twyman's still a very good friend. Twyman is 95 years old, and he's like a second father to me.
Wow.
There are many of us radio alumni that are very fond of Twyman. And of course, I knew them all. Knew Mr. Goodacre very, very well.
So he hired
And
you
he's
there,
original. He's the owner of the station, the first owner.
and that was your first radio
That's
job
correct.
in your hometown.
Yeah.
Would you call that your first job, or
No. My very first job was in
fields,
I
tobacco
worked,
fields?
correct. But I worked for a fellow named Mr. Charlie Merrick in the Hobson Store community of Caldwell County, mowing yards, chasing cows, cleaning out fence rows.
Sounds like
building barns, whatever.
And
I started very young. And my first public job was at where now is housed Joseph Storage Bin. It was back in those days, that's Joseph Storage Bin in Princeton's owned by HR Ministries. But right there, that building, my first public job was where I started paying Social Security. It's
coming in handy now, isn't it?
It is indeed. Gold Namers. And then I also worked for the food giant.
So you were all over Princeton, but it sounds
Sure,
to me like your first job that you really loved was WPKY, I would say. I can't speak for you, but it sounds like it really set you on your trajectory.
Yeah,
you're not working at a grocery store. You're not working chasing cows anymore, for sure.
No, I was doing it all.
And
actually, like I do now. I was, but with the majority of the time spent there.
So PKY.
But anyway, so I answered the call to preach. Actually, I was at the Sherway Food Store, known as the Food Giant now. It was at 11:45 on July the 15th, 1977. I was hauling out milk and eggs to the dairy cooler. I'd been under conviction about living a dual standard life. For a bit, I would, but most of the time, serve the Lord. But then there was a side of me was two-faced. I was doing worldly stuff that I
think a lot of us can relate to that.
I was only 18, but I doing stuff that I shouldn't have been doing at all. And anyway, I said I can't keep this up. And I thought I was just under conviction because of my sin. It was much deeper. That's deep enough. But I went to I repented right there. But I went to our interim pastor. We didn't have a pastor at the time, at Eddy Creek Baptist Church in Princeton, and I shared with him what was on my heart, and discovered that the Lord was calling me to preach, and I made that public on July the 17th, 1977. And I will tell you that broadcasting has been simultaneous with my call. And so coming here didn't happen until the first time, and when I was pastor of Elk Lick Baptist Church. Now, my first Christian radio job was not this one. We left after I graduated from Murray State University.
After you'd married
Tammy. Tammy and I met at Murray State, and we married June 7th, 1980. And I was still working at a station in Murray and in Princeton as well. I was working at two stations, and my first Christian radio job was in Texas. There was a station there. It is owned by K-Love now, but at that time it was owned by. It became K-Lite. It was a very popular station for many, many years, but back before that, it was Kojo, and then it was KWJS, owned by Jimmy Swaggart Ministries. I was a student at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, and I worked there in the afternoons. So that was my first full-time Christian radio job.
You got some stories from that place, don't you?
All kinds of stories.
I've heard you say some funny things here and there. It sounded like a big station to be one of your first.
100,000 watts, it was. Yeah.
So you eventually ended up in Bowling Green, Kentucky, helping start a radio station. I might be skipping ahead because you have some work at
I would just when we came back to Kentucky
from Texas,
actually WNKJ, I knew about it. It was already on the air.
Hadn't been on very long.
No, but here's the thing: we moved away just as soon as I graduated from Murray State, which was December '82, and in January '83 we were gone to Texas. And anyway, when we came back here, came back here to to pastor a church and go to Southern Seminary, which I eventually graduated. But the story about here is that when I first came here to apply, at that point pastors weren't working here, but that changed, and Jim hired me part-time, and I took over the night shift for a part of it for Joe Barner.
So
the
you
first
and Joe
time.
go
I've
way
been here
back.
3 different times, and now I've been here now 26 straight years.
Yeah, so Joe and you've known each other a while, and when he said Jim, he's talking about the first general manager,
Jim Adams, our
Adams.
listening family knows
Only
him.
been 2 general managers,
And I'm in my
entire time.
11th year, and
Yeah.
Jim was 34 years.
So you took Joe's night spot then?
I did, and that's the reason Joe liked me so much.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that it?
That's
Can
it.
I ask him about this later? What will he say?
I'm sure he'll say the same thing. But anyway, no, I think there's more to it than that. But to piece this story together, in '85, I was pastoring Elk Lick Baptist Church in Lewisburg, Kentucky, a spa.
Yeah.
And I would go in and out of Bowling Green. I'd received this circular or survey. What programs would you like? What kind of would you like to see on a new Christian station in Bowling Green? That was sent out by the directors, and Pastor Joe Timberlake of First Assembly of God sent it out, best I recall. And I was there visiting there in Bowling Green, so I decided to go by his office and meet him. It wasn't just a chance visit. I hadn't applied for a job, and he said, "Why don't you come in here and talk to me?" Well, to cut to the chase, it wound up. I was answered the call. I left here and I left the church without a promise of a salary or anything, and they had some money, but so they by faith set a salary on the amount that they had. We weren't even on the air. I mean, it wasn't. What the funds that they had gathered was to buy equipment, and so we're talking about WCVK, Christian Family Radio. So they're coming up on 40 years this year in April, being on the air, April 22nd.
And you were their first general manager?
I first was on there as director of development, and then became their general manager.
Okay.
Right.
And what are they called now?
Christian Family Radio.
Christian Family Radio? Okay. CFR.
CFR.
Yes. So I was born while you were there.
Correct.
And you actually announced that I was born on the air. And there's a picture of me where you're holding me up to the microphone, but not too close.
Well, I wasn't doing the what's that lion about the anyway. I wasn't trying to Lion King.
Simba and Rafiki holding it up over Pride Rock. No, yeah, because I'm sure a tiny kid would want to grab the microphone.
What happened?
I guess I grabbed it because here I am.
Well, actually, it was between 8 and 8:30 when you were born on February 26, 88. And Eunice Woosley and let's see, Jimmy Carr was on the air. They were on the air. And what I did, I picked up the telephone there beside in the room where we were, Tammy and I were, and I called and they put me on the air, and I announced that you had been born, and we went live. So,
Well, it's interesting, but no, that's a special thing to me because we weren't there very long as far as after I was born.
No,
I don't remember it at all.
No. But anyway, to here, when we came back, I came back on part-time, work nights.
But you became a missionary. Don't forget that part.
Yeah, we were missionaries to Honduras for several years.
Close to 8 years.
But anyway, actually altogether 10 years with the board.
So 1992, we got to Costa Rica. We came back to Caldwell County, Kentucky in the summer, fall 2000.
Yeah, but still
That's
I
when
was
you-
connected, but I was connected with the board.
Here?
The International Mission Board.
Okay. But then you
For
eventually,
10 years.
your path, God led you back to what was called WNKJ at that time, which is now Missionary
Right,
Radio, obviously.
but mostly I was part-time, a part-time announcer. But it was in 2015 that I was asked to consider. There's a whole lot more to this story, but just to say that I became the general manager upon Jim's retirement. My first officially on October the 4th of 2015.
So you're going on what?
I'm in my 11th year.
Okay. But I just want to say real quick, before that happened, from about the year 2000, probably through 2002 or 3, I used to come here with you. You would do some nights on the weekends. You're pastoring and being director of missions, but you would come here, and I would just come and tag along because whenever we go to the gas station, you buy me whatever I wanted. Mom wouldn't do that. I love you, Mom, but I knew that if I was riding with Dad, I'd get to come hang out somewhere quiet and interesting and get Dodge's chicken down the road and whatever I wanted at 10 o'clock at night. Hey, there's perks, But no, I have a fond memory of coming here from a young age. This place is special to me, and for me to be here doing this is very cool because of how I was born into it and everything like that. But I just wanted to mention that. But so you've been the general manager for almost 11 years, and in that time,
my 11th year, yeah.
And in that time, there's been a lot of change around here as far as like renovating the property, acquisition or merger, I should say, with some other radio stations, other nonprofits. All kinds of stuff has happened. Is it like that?
There have been some trials and there's been some victories, and
God never promised it otherwise, did He?
It's the Romans 8:28 factor. It all works together and mixes. Kind of like the old saying: if you want a cake, you got to mix it together. If you just have flour and eggs and milk and all of those things and sit it on the table, you don't have a cake.
What would life be without ups and downs?
Well, that's
would it
true.
be anything at all?
But what you're trying to say, that this station was founded in faith, it remains in faith. And the founder's footprints and fingerprints are all over this station. And the DNA, the world needs King Jesus, is still there. We don't use but the call letters because there are multiple stations here. And so we decided to position ourselves especially when we formed the partnership with Trans World Radio, and now that was in 2014, I believe. And well, at least its initiation, it really got rolling when I became manager. But I give Jim credit for making the contact for
believing in it.
Well, right, and setting the pace for it.
Because if you think about that, that's taking a chance. You're partnering with some other entity that's on mission around the world, and it has not been in vain.
Absolutely not. And so. But to back up and answer your question about the things that have happened, I started looking at the building. In fact, we even considered moving, and we're on the verge of moving. And just a lot of factors went in, and we're broadcasting down at the other end of the building, and we're for many, many years until 2017. And I just said, we need to do some repairs and so there's so many details to this story.
Basically, somebody came in with a big donation and that was like right then,
well,
something like that.
Yes and no. That was for equipment replacement, but what it was, I went to the board of directors, and I said, we need a certain amount of money for equipment replacement, which is like $15,000. Just
even
minimum,
more expensive now.
Minimum. And at the same time, we did a year-end fundraiser to do the remodeling, which was $22,000 that our listeners raised for that.
They do great things.
And then when it came, and we had lots of help for people that knew what they were doing to get this done. It was a team effort. And then, let's see, probably the equipment, that's a story. We needed altogether, my goodness, it was like $48,000 or more. And we had already committed the night before the story I'm about to tell you happened. And we're sitting in a morning prayer meeting. It's 9 o'clock, where all of us were gathered to pray that we're here. And somebody came in. That's when we kept the door open all the time, when you really could. And we didn't have to click somebody in.
Scare them with that loud noise.
Well,
so you're sitting there praying 9 o'clock like we do all the time.
Right. And someone came up the stairs. And when they came up the stairs, I heard his voice as outside the door. He said, "I want to speak to the boss man." And I said to Tammy or Joe, they couldn't see me because I was around the corners now where the control room is. And I said, well, I'll be glad to talk to him, but just wait a moment. He said, I think he wants to speak to me now. About that time, Joe said, "Hey, Brother Larry," it's Brother Larry Baker. And so I said, "Come on in and pray with us." And he said, "I think you might want to read this envelope before we pray." I said, can it wait? I was just really kind of pushing back. And he said,
well, it's not every day that somebody abruptly comes in at prayer time
no,
and does that.
and I was just going to get on with the prayer time. Of course, Larry's going to pray with us.
Yeah.
And I read, it was from the Ed Mosley Foundation. Mr. Ed Mosley told the story about him. It's just so much there. But it'd take forever to take this. But very faithful servant of God. He came all to our prayer days and carathons, and he would just silently pray and go on. And he was a treasurer for the Christian County Baptist Association. But in his death, he included different things in his will, and one of them was us. And when I looked down at the check, it was $48,000 or something. And what did we need for the equipment upgrades? $48,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
He had no idea, I'm sure.
No. He just loved this ministry, and that's what he had put in his will to get it done. And Larry was the executor of that will, having served as director of missions for many, many years and working with him.
So from the very beginning, listening to the radio in your living room on a hot summer night, all the way to now, you've seen so many ups and downs in the radio world, but like in Christian radio, it just is above all the other radio experiences you've had, I would say.
Well, certainly, and I dabble and help out with voice work and different things still.
But the most meaningful is proclaiming the world needs King Jesus.
Absolutely, and this ministry has grown through the merger that we had with Heartland Ministries Radio in
WVHM Southern Gospel 89.7, and then Thrive FM 88.1. Those are the main frequencies.
And then 90.5 WAAJ is part of Missionary Radio.
Right.
And
so that was another big thing. There's no time to tell all these stories, unfortunately.
Full of them.
Yeah.
But just a living storyteller, I guess.
But that's happened in the 11 years that you have been here.
Yeah, it's hard to chronicle to hold people's attention to a long story like this.
And you're still chugging on.
Really?
Yeah. Here you are.
I thought this was the day I was retiring. There's a reason you're doing this.
No, this is not him announcing that. This is I think you still got some years left in you.
I don't know. We'll see.
Whatever the Lord wills, right?
That's how I see it.
What is on your heart and mind as you look back at not just radio as a whole, but like the ministry part of it? Like what has that meant to you?
Well, I believe in the medium of radio, and I'm really excited to see that radio is still an entity that is being used, and I will still believe FM radio is very important. And I think even though in this world of digital and artificial intelligence, that folks are still wanting something authentic, real, and has soul in it.
I personally do.
And I believe that we're still we're your local community Christian station, and we're trying to bring meat instead of pablum. And so I believe that from the founders till now, that we're maintaining our course with the board of directors and everyone that's a part of this team, that we still believe the world needs King Jesus, and we still are going to proclaim it through our broadcasting, through our programming, through our music, and what we say.
There's a ton you could get into, stories and just great things you've seen, ups and downs, but there's only so much time.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to say out there? Is that pretty much cover it?
Well, we've kind of it's kind of like a survey course when I teach seminary. You kind of survey this book, but
I just like this format. I don't like canned questions. I just like to have a conversation with the people. I know everybody.
Maybe we'll
here.
come back some other day and just tell some stories, because the station that I helped start in Bowling Green, we're going to be chronicling some stories that they don't know, because they didn't live it. And so I'm going to be able to tell stories and put some things together for them that they absolutely don't know. Same thing with Jim Adams can do for here. And so I am excited about the now and the future for Missionary Radio.
100% listener-funded Missionary Radio.